third session. After a lot of insight from the previous session. Now we are going to the listen another session. Have you ever come the sleepiness? Hopefully, after if eating, you guys will be so more enthusiastic. Okay, without any further, let's move to the next session. The topic is soil health for promoting agricultural production by Dr. Katharina Keiblinger from the University of Natural Resources and Life Science Vienna BOKU. This session will be led by our moderator, a lecturer from Faculty of Agricultural Technology, Ahdiar Fikri Maulana, PhD. Let me introduce the moderator by reading the CV for you. Oh, sorry. There's a mistake. So Adrian Fikri Maulana, PhD, already done a bachelor degree as in forest cultivation, Gajah Mada University. Also a master degree in plant nutrition and soil science, Yamagata University. Also finished their PhD in plant nutrient and soil science, UGAS Iwate University. Ahdiar Fikri Maulana, PhD, also have another publication, which one is native arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi and nuclea orientalis for potential reclamation of tropical coal mining areas. Also have another research project and conference, which is for the research project is isolation and characterization of endophytic fungi and their role in the propagation of Viscus fistulosa seedlings, and also attend the conference, second international conference of agroforestry, Universitas Gajah Mada. So we don't have to wait any longer. Please welcome Ahdiar Fikri Maulana, PhD. The time is yours.
Thank you, MC. Good afternoon, all participants. It's around 58, if I'm not mistaken. 58 people are gathered here. Yes, including the online participants, I think, from 15 countries, if I'm not mistaken, too, around. And then, good afternoon. My name is Fikri, just call me Fikri. I'm acting as the moderator for this session. This is the third, I think, for today lessons. This is the third, yes. And it is one of the most difficult times after lunch. You're getting more sleepy, even me. Yeah. In the morning, you have two lessons regarding the foods, right? And then now we are going back to a place which you grow your food, the soil. Yeah, we are going to talk about the soil health. We will have Dr. Katharina Keiblinger as the speaker now. She is a senior expert, senior scientist from BOKU, Austria, in soil health. Yes, and then we will learn many things from her. I think you can ask many questions later. And then before we start, I think I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker for this session, Dr. Katharina Maria Keiblinger from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, Vienna, BOKU. And she graduated for PhD in Soil Research, University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, Vienna. And then for research project, she has some experience in some countries, even Indonesia also. And for publications, the last or the latest one is about the soil quality increases with long-term carbazite, zeolite, tough amendments in arable and perennial cropping systems. And she has been awarded many awards, Burn Road, EDRI, and Agran, and also Asian European Academic University Network. So yeah, I think even me, I'm looking forward to her presentation also. So before that, okay, let's just start. I think without further ado, we would like to start. Dr. Katharina Keiblinger, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yes.
So I will try to
Dr.
share my.
The time is yours. Yes.
Does the screen sharing work?
Yes, it's clear on me.
Okay.
It's on.
Good. Then I would like to say thank you to the organizers to invite me for this precious talk, and like good afternoon to all the participants. I'm talking about soil health this afternoon. And I will start my talk with an introduction of our university and a very brief one about myself and my research. And then the rest of my presentation will be split into two major topics. One is on soil health in arable farming system in Austria, and the second one is on restoring degraded soils in Indonesia, Bangka Island. So let me start with a brief introduction where BOKU, the university where I'm currently working, is located. So what you can see on the right-hand side is where you are in Indonesia and where I am currently located. And BOKU is in Vienna, which is the capital of Austria, a very small country in the center of Europe, as you can see. And we have about 8 million inhabitants, and our language is German. You can see the castle of Belvedere over there. So we have also some history to be seen if you come and visit Vienna at one point. But coming to our university, we have a history of 150 years about. So we have just recently celebrated our 150th anniversary. And in BOKU, we have roughly 12,000 students and 2,000 employees and 9 bachelor programs. And to start with, the BOKU's history started more with agriculture and forestry, and we currently run several international and English-taught master programs. So if you're interested, you can click on the link to get some information of the different programs that BOKU is providing. And our missions of BOKU are the conservation and development of protection and for habitats, and also the economic market as well as standard of living beings, and the management of natural resources, which is part of the name of the university, which is Natural Resources and Life Sciences. And so basically it's about protecting food and health.
Excuse me, Dr. Keiblinger.
Yeah.
I cannot see it's moving. It's stuck in the first slide.
Sorry.
Can you
I can try to restart it. Can you see it now?
I think so. Maybe.
Is it moving?
Can you click the slideshow function?
Yeah, obviously. So is it working like that?
Yes, or
is it semi good? If I move like that?
It's working this way, but bisa dipencet nggak?
Yeah, I can try it once again, probably. To
in the corner.
Yeah.
Below most corner, the right one, right corner. You can see
Here.
percentage there, 116. That yes.
So is it working?
Not yet. Can you click it once more, maybe?
Yeah. So I can.
Yes, that part.
Yeah.
I'll click
But it's
F5.
not moving. Maybe I can try to stop screen sharing once more.
Okay.
And try it again. Sorry. Does it move?
Can you click it once more?
Yeah.
The slideshow button?
Yep. Does it move?
No, it's still the same, I think.
Okay.
But I think that's fine. We can just use this, interface. But you have to move it down slide by slide.
If it's fine for everyone.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Well,
now it is showing your research focus in our slide.
Is it fine?
This is the BOKU mission.
So you already introduced my research focus. So as I have a major in chemical engineering and quite some experience in different national and international institutions, And like my vision and ambition to study soil is also on a rather broad scale. So from the landscape scale, where I study soil development, but also how this affect the effects of land use change or climate change, such as drying and rewetting, and how this is related also with the soil microbial processes that are important for nutrient cycling processes. And if we think about soil health, it's also about how we can restore them. So in terms of, on the one hand side, with technological solutions, but more and more towards nature-based solutions to make sure that we have a science-based transformation to include also local stakeholders such as farmers in a co-creation basic. And all this vision and ambition of my research to understand soil ecosystems and the processes are fundamental to understand how we can restore degraded soils and improve soil health. Because if we consider that in the European Union, about 60% of the soils are considered to be unhealthy or even to further degrade, we need to think about restoring the soil health. And just recently, last year, a soil health monitoring directive was launched by the European Union to tackle these soil threats. And among the soil threats, there are many, and I have highlighted those that I'm investigating the most, like, for example, the loss of soil organic carbon, which is very important for the nutrition of plants, but also the loss of soil biodiversity and nutrient losses, as there are many others like soil compaction, erosion, soil consumption, pollution, but also peatland degradation. While in the past, soil health was mainly focused on chemical and physical parameters, it is more and more clear that we need to consider like this living and active part of microorganisms for healthy soils to make sure they provide us with these essential functions they have. And as you can see here, like, for example, the production function or like the climate regulation function. So let me talk about what this soil health is and what a healthy soil, which functions it can provide to us. As like, I think everyone would be aware about the production function, for example, producing food and fiber and things like that, and feed for animals. This is very crucial. If we feed on our terrestrial soils, this is a big proportion. But with this, there is a lot of other functions that do not have this like monetary value, like, for example, the storage of water in the soil, but also infiltration to make sure that we have also some adaptability to climate on the one hand side, and a climate function if we think about the storage and sequestration of carbon and greenhouse gases in the soil. So you probably have heard about the 4 per mil initiative. If not, we can talk about it later. But also the recycling of nutrients function and biodiversity function. So this is just to name a few. We can talk about probably other functions maybe later on. And if we consider soil health, there are a few things that we should also consider in terms of what can be managed of these soil health parameters and what are basically parameters that are unchangeable because they are related to site characteristics. So what are unchangeable site characteristics? If you have your own land, you're a farmer, then there is a piece of land and it is located at some spot and it has a certain history in terms of like parent material, but soil age. And this also determines at some point soil texture or the profile depth. And you can not change these conditions. While there are also some changeable management factors, such as soil organic carbon, soil structure, and soil microbiology. And these are the most changeable ones, are the ones that are related with this organic or biological part of the soil. And to get some idea on like the importance of these parameters, I will start with a more theoretical information on like these parameters and then present some of our study results. So let me start with the soil structure. I don't know what your background is, but to make sure that we can sequester soil organic carbon and make sure that we have a healthy soil, the soil structure is a very important point. And basically, it's like structured in a hierarchical model according to Tisdall and Oates. And this states that like you see kind of like crumbly structure of a soil, then we would consider this as a good soil structure, which is for sure also related with the texture of our soil. Within these big crumbles that you can often visually see when you take a shovel and dig it into the soil, whether it has this nice popcorn structure or it will more likely have a look like a brownie, fudgy brownie. Yeah. So thinking about this popcorn structure, these popcorns or macro aggregates are consisted of smaller aggregates, meso and micro aggregates, and these are glued together by the activity of the living beings that are contained in our soil. For example, plant roots or the hyphae of some fungi produce some like sugary substances, and these glues together all these particles. And within these smaller particles, we can then find like the original mineral particles that are contained. Like on the one hand side, the mineral particles like the amorphous aluminosilicates or oxides or clay surfaces. On the other hand side, this humic material or also this label organic matter that is protected inside against further decomposition. So this is like a huge habitat for microorganisms, and that's why soil structure is important on the one hand side, and it is forming a habitat, but it is also built by these organisms that are contained in the soil. And to this end, I would like to continue with the fact what makes these organisms being active. Yeah. So which are the parts of the soil that are active? We need to consider a soil, and that not every part of the soil has the same functions because we have so-called hotspots in our soil. So there is like plant roots, there are pores that are formed by earthworm activities or nematodes, or as I just mentioned, the formation of these aggregates that often occurs along a root, for example. So if you have fine roots and those die, then these are encapsulated in an aggregate. You can sometimes very nicely see these aggregates around. Or if you have organic matter material or detritus that comes from crop residues or some forest litter that is on the topsoil, these are the areas where soil is most active. So what does this basically mean to us? There is a large proportion of a so-called bulk soil or dead soil, where we have a very huge volume of this soil, where the activity is rather tiny, yeah? And in these hotspots, for example, this rhizosphere that is along the root, or the porosphere, the detritosphere, aggregatosphere, we have a very small proportion of our soil where we have very high process rates. Because we can consider that the biggest part of the soil faces rather challenging conditions for these microorganisms because they just suffer from sufficient food and other circumstances that they are not fully active. They are in a cold dormant state and will only become active if they are supplied with more food. So we have now realized what are the hotspots. There are even other parameters which show us what is important for microbial activity. And these are like in our areas, seasonal effects, but I guess also you will observe differences in temperature and moisture, and these drive a lot our activity in the soil. So this is an image of an Austrian field where you can see on the left-hand side, here, we have a brown, bare soil. So we have basically usually one main crop season over 1 year. And in the time we do not grow a crop, we have a bare soil. And you can imagine then if there are summer conditions, then the sun heats up the soil, and we can reach rather high temperature, as you can see, close to 50 degrees, which have kind of a sterilizing conditions to the microorganisms that are contained in the topsoil. While on the right-hand side, you have a nice vegetation cover. So there are activities to make sure when you do not grow a main crop, you keep your soil covered, which has several advantages. It protects the soil from erosion activities, but also make sure that it is like moderating temperatures and has other effects. And what you can see here, that if you have a vegetation cover, that the temperatures are like lower and more moderate, and it also has effects on the moisture. And if we consider that the bacteria and fungi that are active in our soil have also different optima for their growth, you can see this here in the slide, that both of them have a temperature optimum in the range of about 30 degrees. So they really favor the like nice conditions that you face also in the tropics. So like very high activity and growth rates under these temperature conditions. While if you look into the 45 degrees of bare soil, there is almost no growth because it's then basically too hot for them. While also the respiration of the soil, so the heterotrophic respiration that comes from the activity of microorganisms, they breathe as we do, then we will realize that also this has an optimum in terms of soil moisture. So we can imagine that like this respiration is increasing with temperature, but if we consider different moisture conditions, that it can be basically too wet for them because they do not have sufficient air to breathe, yeah? And it can be too dry for them if we look at the edge here. So what happens here? It's too dry, so the like food, so like the provision of food does not work because many of them are living on the surface of an aggregate, and the consumption of food works via the diffusion of substances. So this is also limited. That's why we have an optimum at rather moderate conditions. And with this basic background knowledge, I would like to introduce you now a project that we were running in the eastern part of Austria that you can see here on the left-hand side, where we were doing a so-called on-farm trial to investigate the soil health potential of pioneer farming systems. And you can see these pioneers here on the top, where we have this covered field compared to this recently harvested cornfield, for example. And what we have done here, selecting these pioneer farmers because they were rather active in improving the soil health for a longer period by farmer-to-farmer hub to increase soil health. And in the real vicinity, we were also sampling a standard field, a farmer that was doing business as usual, and a so-called reference, which is a nearby field margin or hedgerow, to get an idea what is theoretically possible in a soil that is not under arable land use. And the big advantage of covering these larger areas of unfarmed trials is that we could identify how this affects a big variety of different soil types that are contained in the area that are used for arable production, which varied a lot in clay content, as you see here. And the sampling was conducted at 3 different intervals. So we were selecting 0 to 5, 5 to 20, and 20 to 35 centimeters. And the main reason for that was that the IPCC suggests a sampling depth of a minimum of 30 centimeters for several parameters to get an idea because of the tillage activities. What do these pioneer farmers have together is basically that they more or less focus the core principles of regenerative agriculture. And what do we understand under regenerative agriculture is that they have like a different context of understanding of their farming operation, but together they minimize the soil disturbance. So they work plowless for a long time of their farming and or do minimum tillage operations. They maximize the crop diversity They keep the soil covered over long periods. So as I mentioned with the cover crops before, and like living plant, and include livestock. While I need to stress here that only a low proportion has included livestock, because there is a big specialization ongoing in the eastern part of Austria, where there is only little livestock included in arable systems. And this let me come already to the first results, and to show you where we could see the strongest effects. And what was basically seen that these pioneers could improve the soil health, and the strongest effects we could see in terms of the functions is in particular for the biological characteristics, the green ones that you can see here. And the biggest effects were where you can see these really large bars where the pioneer was like really way better than the standard, but also in some chemical properties and physical properties, but most strongly in the ones that are more dynamic characteristics. So this means in the biological fractions and in the label fractions. But this was not only the effect on in terms of which parameters were analyzed, but also in which soils were analyzed based on the most dynamic sites. So what would we consider as the most dynamic sites? The most dynamic is often also to be seen the topsoil, because like the topsoil receives the most input from detritus, but also experience strongest changes from the environment. So this is a very dynamic site. And as you can see here in the pictures, the most strongest changes were found in the topsoil, where we would also assume the highest biological activity to be most strongly influenced by. And on the very right-hand side, you can also see, I hope you can see, that this was affected by the difference in soil texture. So we divided our soils into 3 different texture classes, which, as you could see, that we have a big variety of different clay proportions, that the soils with the lowest clay proportion, considered as a light soil, has the strongest changes, while the heavy soils, as you can see on the very right edge, showed the lowest proportion of changes. So we could see the lighter the soil is textured, the more dynamic was the site in terms of changes. Now I would like to give you a more detailed picture on like a few parameters that were changing depending on the different soil functions they provided. And here I would like to show you the changes in soil organic carbon. As I mentioned, this is a very important characteristic that we can manage, and it has the function of moderating the climate, or like sequestering carbon to increase the organic matter. And what you can see here, that the pioneer farming systems could significantly increase the soil organic carbon, and the reference systems that were out of arable land use had even higher ones. So we could not use them as a real reference because it's not a fair one if you compare it to farming system, but definitely the regenerative practices has some potential. And in terms of the more reactive pools, we could again see, if you look into the changes with the coarse, medium, and fine fraction. So these are the light textured and this is the heavy textured. The coarse one were even close to the reference systems, while for the fine one, there was no significant difference between the pioneer and the standard systems. And as this soil organic matter contains of different fractions, if we consider this soil structure, for example, if you think back to this aggregate hierarchy model, then like this soil organic matter is contained of like bigger macro aggregates, as you can see here, and smaller micro aggregates, or the texture fraction. And we have tried to disperse and look into this stability of aggregates, and what you could see that the pioneer could increase their proportion of macro and micro aggregates, while this was less so the case for the standard system. And we also proved this with another method, like not only with the dispersion of those aggregates by applying ultrasonic energy, but also with thermal energy in a thermogrammetry approach. where we could see again that the most labile fraction that is burned in lower temperatures started to differentiate these different sites. And as I mentioned, the aggregate stability, and this is a very important function also from the water perspective, not only from the structure and the habitat function for organisms, but also for the storage of water and infiltration. We could also see a strong increase in aggregate stability among our different farming systems. Because if you have a look here, there is no change in the fissures if we look into pore classes, but in the transmission pores, there was a decline. So this is most likely the case because of the reduced tillage operations, so that these transmission pores declined in the farming systems, while what is clearly to be seen here, that there is an increase in the storage pores for water, which is exactly the pore size, which is the the major habitat for microorganisms. And what is important here, probably less so the case in the wet tropics, in the Eastern Austrian sites, we face real problems of water shortage because we have a continental climate, while the rest was less so affected. And if we think about the soil aggregates, and I have just mentioned the tillage operations, I just wanted to give a brief outlook also on how tillage operation affects soil aggregate. And this is on a field trial where different intensities of tillage operations were investigated over a longer period. And what you can see that there is like no tillage operation at all showed the highest aggregate stability, while there was a really dramatic decline with the use of the plow in the soil aggregate stability. And if we also look into how this affects our microorganisms, that there is a big problem with using the plow, with a decline in the one hand side saprophytic fungi, but also in mycorrhizal fungi that were investigated. Okay, so to summarize, the first part of my presentation would be that soil structure and soil life are very closely interlinked and are essential soil health parameters, and that the pioneer management in arable Austrian farms contributes to better soil function, such as climate function and water storage. And to this end, I would like to ask you if you have any first questions on this part before I would like to continue with the second part of my presentation.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Keiblinger. You would like to welcome questions from all the participants? Any questions? Yes, please.
So my name is Abu Huraira and I'm from Pakistan. My question is simple, as it was mentioned by Dr. Katharina that high temperature is ideal for bacterial and fungal growth. So I was wondering what will be the condition of a soil from an area which is always frozen, like from North Pole or Antarctic region. So it's a simple question. I was just curious about this.
Yeah, many thanks for this question. So you could also see, maybe I can briefly go back to this one. Yeah, you can see that at very low temperatures, you have also very low activity. And this is also basically the case why we have such a big buildup of soil organic matter, because at very low temperature, there is very little activity. So if we have some plant production, this is not mineralized. And so there is no recycling of nutrients provided. And also this is some activity that's contained by that is conducted by the bacteria and the fungi. And so the biggest soil organic carbon stores are often to be found in the very, very northern region where we have the problem of very low temperatures. So we have limited plant production, but also limited microbial activity. And this leads then to a buildup of soil organic carbon. Did this answer your question?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other, maybe? Any other question? Yes, please.
My name is Ruta. I'm from Madagascar. My question is a little bit in the context of Madagascar. I noticed that the most of the rice fields in Madagascar uh, have clay under the rice fields at the bottom, and I want to know if does clay makes the land fertile? That's my question. And secondly, in Madagascar, we have lots of red soil. And what kind of agriculture can we do for those kind of red soil? Thank you.
Okay, many thanks for the questions. They are rather challenging to me because I'm more expert in the temperate soils, I need to say, and also in particular if it depends on farming system, I'm not an expert in Madagascar soil. For the clay soils, there exist for sure very fertile clay soils, but rice production is something that have really different conditions. So in particular, if we look at this picture here, we have rather anaerobic conditions. So the oxygen supply to the soil that comes from the plant. So this is different problems that we were facing also in terms of decomposition and rotation, depending on the climate that we face and also the soil aging. So in many places, the soil age has really developed and this often declines fertility because clay cannot be considered as clay, while the clays that we were observing in our temperate climates where we had an ice age before are rather young soils, and these are rather active clays that can store and absorb loads of nutrients. While when you consider rather aged soils that have a long time to develop, the clay structure is also kind of declining and the clay has less capacity to keep the nutrients. And this means that also there exists some clay soils that are poor in fertility, and also it is related with the pH that we observe in the soils, if these nutrients will be available or you are able to lime them, for example.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much for the answer.
Thank you.
Any other maybe? We still have time. Any other question for the first topic of Dr. Keiblinger? Sure. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Winston. I'm from Indonesia. So my question is, earlier you said there's healthy soils. So my question is what are the key function of the healthy soils and how do they impact to the environments?
Okay, the key functions, I have probably already summarized the ones that are shown here. Are I think many people first talk about the production function, while it depends on where you are located. It's whether you suffer from water shortage, then it will be the storage of water and provision to the plants under dry conditions. But if you experience heavy rainfall and precipitation, it's also about the water infiltration capacity of a soil. So this is something that we can manage and that a soil can provide to us. And as I would like to refer even to the first question, this nutrient recycling function is also provided by a healthy soil, and it's microorganisms, the recycling of the detritus that enters our soil from the top, from the plant vegetation, needs to be recycled to give it back to the plant. So it's basically a cycle system, and if we have some shortages of this microbial activity, then the provision of nutrients to the plants cannot be supported. So this is a very important function. And what I would understand as a climate function is the sequestration of soil organic carbon, where the buildup of soil organic matter in a soil also has the big advantage of that it has kind of a capital to recycle these nutrients by its decomposition or mineralization. And the biodiversity function also refers not only to the activity of those and the processes that they conduct, but like if we consider that, for example, antibiotics are discovered from soil organisms, this is a huge reservoir that we should consider to restore, because we never know which kind of new health issues the society will face, and that we have also the solutions to be found there. Does this answer your
All right,
question?
thank you. Yeah, that's answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other more? No? Online, of course. There is an online question from the online participants. I think we can read it. Sorry, I haven't joined the Zoom. We will show you by the...
I cannot
Hello.
see. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Yes. Hi there. I'm Abby from the Philippines. I just watched a Netflix documentary about soil health in Germany. The title of the Netflix documentation is Farm Rebellion. And what they are doing is improving the soil by having a lot of microorganisms. So what they do to monitor the level or the presence of these microorganisms, they do um, they they collect samples and then look at the microscope if there are already presence of microorganisms. But my question is, there is sort of confusion whether these microorganisms can be put on the crop, on the plant, because nowadays they are saying that we have to do soilless farming like hydroponics, so hydroponics farming, because it's clean, it doesn't contain any microorganisms, because there is this kind of information that if you have worm or other organism, it may go up to the crops. My question is it right, or does it has basis on this kind of information that these microorganisms or the other organisms present in our soil can go up to the crop, especially if our crop is lettuce where we eat them raw as salad? So that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very interesting question, because I'm pretty sure that this is some rather recent research topic, that like people are not fully aware what really is the effect of the soil microorganisms to the plants. But there is a term of the so-called One Health concept. So this means the more healthy in terms of a very biodiverse and interactive microbiome that is contained in the soil is affecting the plant, and also the metabolite, for example, that the plant is producing. So this means that the microorganisms in soil have also the potential to be antagonists against some stressors, and this makes a plant, for example, to produce some antioxidants or something, so some healthy metabolites. So it is considered that if you consume plants that grow in a healthy soil, it has also potential positive effect if you consume this plant for your own health, because the microorganisms that are living on us and inside of us are also to be taken up from our environment. So like the surfaces we touch and the food we consume also affects, for example, our gut microbiome, and can lead to several like diseases on the one hand side, but also can prevent us from diseases. So this concept of One Health is, I think, something that is a very recent research topic where there is still a lot of research gaps, but I'm pretty sure that soil can be a big solution in that. And from this point of view, I hope this answers your question. Okay, so then I probably will continue with the second part of my presentation, that we have some more time for a fruitful discussion, even on the second part that is focusing more on the Indonesian soils here.
Yes, I think I can.
Go back here. So can you see the slide?
Yes,
Yeah.
now it's on. Thank you.
Perfect. And it's about local soil amendments for improving soil health and crop yields in degraded post-mining soil. So as you can see here, this is something that is disastrous to the surface of our soils, and like soil is containing several resources that humankind will need on the one hand side. And we also need to tackle the problems that arise with it. So this investigation took place in Bangka Island, which is located close to Sumatra. And what you can see here is an aerial picture of Bangka Island after post-mining. So you can see that the surface of the soil is totally destroyed. You have like these bare areas that are not covered by any vegetation, and the formation of like these freshwater ponds. And you can imagine that this soil is considered rather infertile. And here, 30% of the land is considered degraded. And before you like mine your soil, you usually have to get rid of the vegetation. So a large proportion of deforestation on a global scale occurs in the tropics. And so we face here severe problems regarding deforestation, as we have some carbon stores also in the above-ground biomass, but also in the severe degradation of soils, as you can see here. And what is tin used for? So any ideas why tin is something important? And as every one of us is using a smartphone or a laptop, in all the electronic devices, we need tin as like a metal. This means the large part of the tin that is globally produced comes from Indonesia and from Bangka Island. And basically, it's one resource that can be mined in a very simple process where you do not add additional chemicals to even more pollute the soil. But still, if you extract the tin from the soil, you make a physical separation of the soil. So what does this mean? A physical separation means that you have your soil and you use some water to float it, have some pumps, and a separation occurs in a way, in a matter of like the density or the heaviness of the particles. So tin is more heavy than the sand fraction. So you can separate the sand fraction from the tin via a sieving or sedimentation process, while the clay fraction is just washed away. And with this washing away of the clay, it is deposited at some point. And these clay deposits, which mainly contain kaolinite, lead to the fact that the very fine material then leads to kind of a plugging. So this is how these freshwater ponds are created. Yeah? So you have areas where water cannot further infiltrate to deeper soil layers, and freshwater ponds are occurring. And on the other hand, you have a large proportion of these sand fractions, which is rather like soil in very, very poor soil fertility and highly acidic due to the fact that it's built on granite bedrock. And so the idea was to study how we can rehabilitate the soil. And that's why we have set up an field experiment in 2018. And as you can see here, there was still a little freshwater pond on top of this area where local farmers have been farming post-mining soil for paddy fields in the close vicinity. We use this very sandy and degraded soil where you can see there is almost no nitrogen contained, an acidic pH, and almost no electrical conductivity. By setting up a randomized plot design with 4 replicates each. And the soil amendments that we applied were, for example, lime to increase the soil pH, but also compost to add some nutrients. Then charcoal to improve soil structure and water holding capacity, and combinations with charcoal and compost and charcoal and sawdust. So if you're interested about the setting up of the experiment and some initial results, they are provided in this YouTube link. I think you should have all the material. And I would like to continue showing you which kind of resources we used. So the idea of using these resources was focusing on the ones that were locally available. So lime is not locally produced, but it was available to farmers, while the compost that we were applying was locally produced from cattle manure, and the charcoal was from wood chips, also available locally on site, as was the sawdust, as you can see here. And as we started this in 2018, there were several activities that we conducted since then in close collaboration between BOKU and Universitas Gajah Mada. And what you can see here, like some joint harvesting with some students and researchers from both universities, or the collection of data from the meteorological station that was implemented in close vicinity to the field, and also discussing with the farmers on the next crop, and also observing together the yield effects of the different plots, or investigating decomposition via some tea bag experiments. So these were the activities that were mainly conducted in the field, while there was also quite some joint activities that we conducted in the laboratory. And this included, for example, elementary analysis, as you can see here, where you determine the soil organic carbon by determining carbon via flash combustion. And also, if you consider lime to fumigate the carbonates that contained prior to the elementary analysis, a field probe for soil texture, but also the digestion of the full soil samples to identify heavy metals, because these degraded soils after mining not only suffer from the low fertility, but also can be problematic in terms of metal pollution, which I have not provided any slides on that today, but we can for sure discuss it. And also some trainings that were conducted on site. And beside the trainings that were conducted in the laboratory, we had also trainings that were more related with the field activities. And what you can see here, that all these activities were even continued during the pandemics, that we had hybrid trainings on the use of biochar stoves to produce locally in small charges biochar for the application in the highly degraded soil, but also training on soil health by digging a pit and feeling the soil and getting an idea on what are the local challenges on soil health and production in joint collaboration. And this let me bring already to some of the results that were also published from this field experiment, where a colleague from Universitas Gajah Mada was doing her PhD under my supervision at University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences. You can see that we were investigating, on the one hand side, the yield, so referring to the production function of the first year after applying these local amendments. And we were aiming to focus on one of these regenerative agricultural management systems in terms of using an intercropping system with cassava and centrosema. And what we can see that if we look at the different soil amendments, that, for example, here on the left-hand side, where the tuber and shoot yields of the cassava are shown, there was an increase in both compared to the control and the dolomite that did not receive any nutrients in the cassava yields in a significant way. And if we look into a more detailed way in the cover crop or the intercrop, the centrosema, which is a nitrogen fixing legume, we can see that there is a slightly different picture to be seen. That in particular, the treatments that received compost, because like in the compost one and the compost charcoal, we could see the most distinctive effects on the soil, on the yields in the plant perspective. And keeping this in mind, I would like to continue talking about the importance of the nitrogen in the system, as like it's a very important nutrient, a major nutrient that is lacking in this degraded soil. And in another publication, we were identifying not only the yields, and with these yields, as I mentioned previously, we were also collecting the effects on like drought resistance by using stable isotopes for in terms of delta 13C. Here we were investigating the nitrogen that we supplied with the treatments that you can see here. So the compost had the highest nitrogen contained, while for sure in the charcoal there is very little, and how the nutrients that are added and the nitrogen comes from the like air because it's fixed will end up in a so-called partial nitrogen balance. And what you can see here on the left-hand side is the like nitrogen in kilogram per hectare, and the nitrogen that comes from the amendment again was highest in the compost treatments, while there is also the highest nitrogen fixation. However, we need to consider if we look into the proportion, the highest proportion is to be found here in the charcoal treatment where we did not have compost, but basically this is related also with the yield effects. So this can be seen here, and this on the other hand side would have a longer term effect also on the total nitrogen stock. So if we think about the improvement of these highly degraded soils in terms of increasing its nitrogen concentration, we can not yet see a significant effect, but a very clear trend towards higher nitrogen stocks in those treatments where on the one hand side nitrogen was either amended or we could see higher yields. So with the higher yields observed, also this would on the long run hopefully also regenerate our nitrogen stocks. And not only nitrogen, as we were talking about other functions of it, I was mentioning that we were also investigating the effects of drought stress, which was not so clear because we had a wet tropical system still under this like long period of growing cassava and its intercropping with centrosema. We could see that there is a little effect also on drought resistant for cassava. But most importantly, what we can see here that we could increase the soil organic carbon stocks, which is also an important measure for soil health and related also with the climate saving function, which was just published 2 months ago, where we can again see the change in soil organic carbon over a period of 4 years. And what you can see is that there is a nice trend by the amendment of charcoal, which contains some soil organic carbon on the one hand side, but also with the compost. So basically the amendment of soil organic carbon and also the yields could then have some consequences. So in this publication, we were not only focusing on the like changes in soil organic carbon, but also whether we can see also effects from its quality. So we used FTIR or Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, whether changes in the organic matter quality could be identified. And to summarize that, it's a nice experiments to do some co-creation with the diverse local stakeholders. And we could see that it is rather fruitful and promising to find joint solutions and to improve the knowledge on all sides, and that the locally available soil amendments could at some extent regenerate unhealthy degraded soils. For sure, it's a very challenging situation that we face there. And I need to stress here, because I haven't shown you the results, the remediation strategies are highly crop specific, not only from the point of view of the yield effects, as you could see for the differences in the cassava production and legume, the centrosema, but also for the accumulation of heavy metalloids in those crops. So this is something that is in our pipeline also to show the results of remaining heavy metalloids in those crops, which are enriched based on the like unhealthy soils, and more research is needed. We have some initial results that this seems to also be something that could be saved with time. And based on that, I would like to ask you if there are some questions, and then potentially start a discussion on some soil threats, soil growth measures and challenges that you would face, because this is some results that we have been conducting with Austrian and German farmers, what they could consider as the major threats for their farming systems, but also in terms of measures and challenges, and where there is more potential to close knowledge gaps together, and future research directions. So many thanks. Are there any questions? No questions? If there are no questions, I have prepared a few. Maybe you can try to link into Mentimeter and enter, and there is some potential that we can discuss based on my presentation. Do you have access?
Dr. Keiblinger, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there is a question from Gia from the Philippines. Which one should we do first?
Yeah, maybe we can start with the questions on the presentation, and then continue if there are no more questions with the questions that I have prepared in case there is still time for it.
Okay. Yes, there is a question from Gia from Philippines. Can you ask once more? Say it once more, baby.
Okay.
There's a question from the on-site participant right now.
Hello.
Great.
Yes, can you hear?
Yeah.
Gia?
Okay. I just want to ask, I'm curious about mycorrhizal inoculations in soil, since it is a new technology. Is it possible that when you inoculate mycorrhiza into the soil, that there could be imbalances in the microbiome in the soil?
I think it's a well-developed technology, because often this is something that many land plants would have. So I would not expect them to survive on the long run. So if you have mycorrhiza grown in a bioreactor and you supplement them, they would find their host and to start a symbiosis. I would probably not suggest that there will be a big imbalance in terms of disastrous effect for the native soil microorganisms. So rather it is a potential positive effect for the plant microbiome, and the native ones will adopt to it. Have you read any literature that there is some negative effect from the mycorrhizal inoculation?
No, but I have experience working in lab with Globus mycorrhiza.
Mhm.
And what I know before was that it's still not yet studied how much, like, if you put too much, would there be an effect? So I
Mhm.
was curious about it.
Yeah, the big question is whether they survive, because I think this is the problem with many of these biostimulant analysis, that there are, on the one hand side, these environmental conditions that are like, for sure, if we have highly degraded soil, there might be some effect. And if the environmental temperature and moisture condition are like matching the ones that are in the bioreactor, there might be some effect. But like in our temperate soils, we have observed so far very, very little to no effects. And there is always like publication bias as well, because if you can not find any effects, then there is a very big likelihood that there are no publications to be found. While if you think about more tropical systems or degraded soils, then you find more publications on the positive effects of biostimulants. But the big question is whether it's more related also to the climatic conditions and the soil conditions, so the pedoclimatic factors probably play a big role. And if you investigate things like that in a pod experiment, you have rather artificial conditions. And so this would need a very broad experiment to also see whether you have negative or positive effects.
Mm-hmm. That's true. The application of mycorrhiza in the Philippines in post-mining conditions is in a nationwide scale, but there's a lack of follow through. It was founded on a national level, but on the production of mycorrhiza, there's little progress because the support was only in the beginning,
Mhm.
something like that. So the baseline was established, but the
Mhm.
results were maybe not valid anymore since the follow through or like it wasn't consistent.
Yeah. Inconsistent results are always problematic because, again, I guess this is often the case because the local conditions play such a big role. So it's hard to give some overall recommendation then.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. That's it for my question.
Any further question from the audience?
Yes, I think, please.
Yes, I'm Abu Huraira from Pakistan. So my question was that definitely pesticides have an effect on the soil. So I was asking about that. There are like some classes of pesticides or like specified categories that are more harmful for soil, or how would you classify if a pesticide is okay to use for the soil or it is not? So my question is that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's a rather challenging question as there are so many different products exist based on pesticides, and like with climate change, there is often a big need for the application based on also changes in climatic like variability, and in particular with insect pests and fungus infestations. While there is for sure a trend also towards organic farming, where often like metals like copper-based fungicides are applied. They are persistent in the soil, so these are not degraded at all, so can only be immobilized to the soil, for example. Or you can consider some phytoremediation of these heavy metals that are used in organic farming. While if you think about all these or different organic agrochemicals that are used as pesticides, there are for sure different classes, and there is usually a specific time when you're allowed to apply them, and for sure there are different national regulations on the application of the different pesticides. I was recently invited to give a presentation that was organized workshop by an NGO that are investigating in pesticide reduction programs, as all these pesticides are ending up also in our food and can harm also humans. And there is a big concern. That's why people start eating more and more organically produced food, as For example, there are so-called persistent organic pesticides that are banned since a specific time, but these persistent ones cannot be further degraded by microbial activities, so they will stay there. And in like a master thesis that I have supervised also in Indonesia, where we were investigating pesticide residue in a catchment area in the Dieng Plateau, we could found quite some pesticide residues of these persistent organic pollutants in the soil. And there is some recent pesticide that is in a big debate. On the one hand side, it's glyphosate. It's a herbicide, and its application where also Austrian farmers are rather like in favor of using it, and many others as well. It's for like replacing tillage operations with the use of glyphosate. And glyphosate is in a big debate for going to be forbidden, or like to having it used to like promote direct seeding or like no tillage operation. And on the other hand side, there is this TFA, which is contained in some recent pesticides that also farmers complain that there is like no replacement in terms of the effectiveness of these fungicides, and that the European market, for example, that big companies that are doing research and development in pesticides, in new pesticides, are not any more interested in going to the European market, because getting a product permitted for their use is too expensive. So it's more likely that they start producing or like investigating pesticides for a different market. And if you think about the global system, it's not only where you can use it, but also that you are allowed to import goods from any place. So you can import the pesticide indirectly from the food that you consume.
Okay, thank you for a very brief answer.
Do you any other question, maybe? Yes, please.
Okay, my name is Roger. I'm from Madagascar. My question is a little bit out of topic, but it's still related of soil studies, which is my research thesis. My question is, what kind of analysis, like physical analysis, mechanical, chemical analysis, or geotechnical analysis, we need to do to find out if his soil is hard enough to create building materials like soil laterite to make bricks like that. That's my question. Thank you.
That's probably also out of my expertise, I need to say, because I'm more into investigating like soil physical and chemical properties to make sure that it acts for the production function or for like other functions rather than the brick production, I need to say.
Yes.
Okay, no worry. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other from the online participant, if there is any? Or on site, any other, maybe? Again? This is the last topic about soil, I think. And the next one is not about soil, even tomorrow.
Yeah, so if
so do you have
if there are no further questions, I can, like, I don't know how much time is left, but I can start sharing the answers that were already provided. Oops, sorry. Can you see it? Or
Yes, we can see it.
yeah.
Can you try the Menti? The barcode? You can scan it.
Does it work? Otherwise, we can go to the next question. I have prepared a few for you. So we can see there are plenty of different functions, and like a very well-known professor from BOKU was even writing a book on like soil functions, and there are for sure a few more that I haven't mentioned. I just focused on the most relevant ones to my, but like, for example, it's also a foundation for human infrastructure. It's just, there was this brick question, and the provision of construction materials or the cultural heritage. If we think about what is buried in the soil, so it can conserve also culture on the long run, or a source of pharmaceuticals and genetic resources, as I mentioned, from the like not only habitat for organisms, but like the genetic resources that are contained in our soils. And the regulation of floods or against landsliding, for example, is also something relevant that we should consider. And based on the question on the pesticide, as like there is a close linkage between the soil. The soil does not only have like the storage function, but also a purification function. So if we think about soil and water pollutants, many of them can also be degraded by the soil organisms. So it has also a purification and decontamination function as well. Okay, then maybe we can go to the next question.
I think so.
So, which soil threats do you remember?
Let's go, guys. The second question.
So there is a big program also by the European Union, like focusing on these unhealthy soils. But like there are like 5 or 6 major missions where there is also loads of research money put into, which is the soil mission and the water mission, but also a mission for cities and for climate, for example. And to consider like these main soil threats that I was mentioning. And like there is a big debate also if we think about human population and its growth, that there is soil use or soil consumption that is like sealing our soils on the long run. So it cannot provide any further functions except for like construction, for example, or a foundation for human infrastructure. So like the sealed soils has just this function, but we cannot further like produce food and fiber or feed, for example, on those, or like save our planet. So like we also should consider like soil consumption as a major threat. And in this regard, the peatland degradation is also in a big debate currently in the European Union, as peatlands are known not for their fertility, but for their high soil organic carbon that is contained in there. And as you imagine, like these anaerobic conditions, yeah, there is no further degradation, no respiration of those soils. So you have an accumulation of the soil organic carbon. And as these wetlands are also like some habitats for specific plants, but very important for a microclimate, there is a big debate whether we can also work on a microclimate function, as, for example, you plant trees in cities to make the living conditions during a heat wave better, also to have microclimates where you had former peatlands to start regenerating former peatlands that are currently in under arable use. So it's the peatland regeneration, or we just discussed the nature restoration law in the European Union. Here it's also linked with the peatland regeneration, or like to restore the peatland degradation. So it seems that like many soil threats have been identified.
Yes.
And many are related with pollution and pesticide use. And like that, for example, also intensive tillage operation can be related with soil erosion. Should we move on to the next one?
Yes. Do you have any question? Excuse me, Dr. Keiblinger. There is a question from the on-site participant. Is it allowed to ask you a question now?
Sure, sure.
Sure. Thank you.
It's still me, Rhoda from Madagascar. I want to ask question about the restoration of the soil during the post-mining period, because during the mining activity, the soil is polluted, especially with the water. Because the polluted water are always used, like the miners reuse, like they recycle the polluted water on the lands, and the pH of the soil becomes acid. That's it. And then how to recover this, how to restore the soil to be fertile? Thank you.
Yeah, like if it's just related with the pH, often you can use lime to increase the pH, but there is like a big interconnection if you consider that the availability of nutrients is related to the pH, but also the availability of like heavy metals, for example. And we cannot see the system of the soil and the water as a separate one, as you correctly mentioned, that like you use water, then like I mentioned that these like freshwater ponds are established via this mining activity. So these freshwater ponds are also used, for example, for irrigation purposes, like building like irrigation channels for the paddy fields that are located close to these like post-mining fields. And also like currently there is some joint activities also on like the quality of these freshwater ponds, because there is kind of a natural succession occurring in the water, but also in the soil. So if we consider just after mining, we often have the problem not only of an acidic pH, but also like the general conditions are unfavorable for like natural vegetation to occur and to promote the different functions that the water and the soil provides to us. So it's about to investigate which parameters are there and how long it takes them to recover, or whether we can take any measures to like accelerate this progress, for example. So if you have a water body and it is very acidic, you can also consider whether you add, for example, some lime to increase the pH, or to make sure that you have less problems by adding some organic substances that can absorb the heavy metals, because if these freshwater ponds are not only used, for example, for irrigation purpose, that it will then end up also in our plants as they consume the water, because they do not only need the soil and the organic matter, but also the water. So if this water is, for example, used to like produce freshwater fish, this is also problematic because it will also end up in our food chain. So it's not only the investigation on what can be done to accelerate it, but also what happens on a natural process. Because often if you understand how the natural process works on the long run, to investigate like a pond after 1 year of mining, after 10 years of mining, after 50 years of mining, you will then see probably also differences between the different ponds, if like a few of them recovered rather quickly and some takes longer, and which parameters may influence. But the problem is that there are so many different factors, for example, the depth of the pond, or like the parent material, so whether it's mainly from like some specific clays, or like which kind of natural like substances will occur in the vicinity or temperature, for example. So there are like many effects that are affecting the natural regeneration to investigate like this succession. So if we link this to our soil perspective, so growing arable foods, which are plants that often grow rather quickly. So the idea is of using varieties of crops that have a very quick plant growth. There is often a very strong lack of nutrients. If we would compare it to rather slow growing forest plants, there might be a bigger potential for them to like stay there on the longer run. Or for like a regeneration, because if we think about the successional phase, then we would start with like really initial colonizers that are able to fix nitrogen because it's not provided from them, and then it will change into systems. While in an arable system, we usually take away the natural, like the vegetation for consumption or for like feeding our animals.
Yeah. So we have to consider many parameters, not only the pH. That's the answer. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keiblinger. Actually, there is a question in the chat column. From Gawel Solowski. Why didn't you use undigested part from anaerobic digestion to increase soil quality?
So the undigested part, you mean from the biogas production?
I'm not so sure, actually.
Yeah. So
I think so. Oh, maybe.
Like this would probably be a good idea for an alternative, to think about alternative sources that can be used for the regeneration of soil health. Sometimes it depends on like the availability, but also on its characteristic, because like the farmers often have cattle themselves, so it's also possible to use directly manure. However, like it's also a matter of how homogeneously you can amend it to your soil. And this could eventually also be a problem with some of the amendments that like if you have a more patchy distribution, as you could see in the plot scale, it's a 2 × 2 meter scale, to make sure that you can more homogeneously distribute your amendments into your soil.
Thank you. And there is another one from Hirwa Shimwe. What are the implications of indirect climate change effect on soil microbial functionality?
Well, I have a back question to this one. So what exactly is meant with the indirect climate change?
Maybe, yeah, maybe just the effect of climate change to microbial functionality.
Yeah, because I think it nicely refers to one of the figures, like it depends on what you would consider as the climate change, and often there are combined effects. So like, for example, I was also investigating in a mountainous area in Austria, the effects of, for example, soil warming and its effects on soil microbial functions, that as like moderate warming increases usually, for example, the respiration and the degradation of soil organic carbon. So on the long run, there is a decline in soil organic carbon via increased respiration. While like when we consider climate change, it's not only the warming that affects, it's also that the carbon dioxide levels increase. And then it starts to get more complicated if you combine these effects, because it depends on like the quantity of the increases in temperature and the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And investigating this combined effect in another mountainous grassland area, we identified that, for example, the grassland stomata like closed with higher carbon dioxide concentration, having then the effect that there is higher water moisture in the soil because of less water taken up. And for sure, there is a fertilization effect of the carbon dioxide, but you have higher soil moisture, which again has several consequences also for the microbial functionality from an indirect effect with the increase in carbon dioxide that can be combined even with the temperature. While if we consider climate change, we should also be aware about not these more moderate changes with some slight increase in temperature and carbon dioxide, but also changes in extreme events, let's say long time droughts or severe precipitation events. And this can be really problematic because considering that under very dry conditions, the microorganisms are the ones that are living in this biofilm that is surrounding a soil aggregate, for example. If there is a desiccation process, they will go into a dormant state and are not further supplied by any nutrients, so their activity is really gone unless you find, for example, a wetting event, and then you have a very quick mineralization process ongoing where you see big flushes also in greenhouse gas emissions after this rewetting event, not only from a carbon, but also from a nitrous oxide perspective. When you increase the decline the redox potential with the higher moisture in the soil, so there is a big interference with the nutrient cycle, then also with this severe event. So this was studied with dried and rewetting, but probably not so prone in the tropical countries. We even have freeze-thaw events. So when we have very cold conditions, also when we have frost conditions, there is very, very little activity. But then when there comes a thaw event, we have also the problem when there is a quick mineralization problem that process ongoing, that this can also result in leaching of the nutrients that are processed then because of the higher temperatures and after defreezing the excess of water that is available.
Thank you. I hope it answers the questions. And we still have time until we have 8 more minutes. Actually, I think we can move to your
next
question.
Quick question. So what would you consider as a major soil challenge after mining, or we can refer to tin mining? Okay, I think this is a big debate. What are the most or the biggest challenges after mining? And I would consider soil structure also a very important one, which is now ranked the least, which one could consider when we have this wash away of the clay minerals and all the organic matter. Everything is gone basically, and also the structure. So we do not only lack the soil organic matter, but also the soil structure. So there is a problem with infiltration or this habitat function. So structure is also highly relevant here. And well, for example, the acidity is something that likely also occurs without mining because it's a granite bedrock. So for sure, it's a problem at this site, but also the natural source will have the problem of acidity there. So it's more to think about. For sure, it's a problem, but what is really coming from the mining process is something. For example, the soil structure is definitely gone because you create a very artificial soil substrate, and altogether this wash away of organic matter and nutrients leads to this very big problem that also relates a lot with crop fertility. So it's always a shock for me to see the very poor plant development when I see the plots. Well, the pollution is something for sure. We will find pollution, and it can be increased with the lack of soil organic matter, because if we think about heavy metals, for example, they can somehow be stabilized with soil organic matter. But why do they mine it there? So basically, this pollution should eventually even be a problem on the native vegetation that is occurring there, and that is likely adapted to the conditions, because like they would mine for tin on these sites because it's occurring in excess conditions. So if we think about tin, it's often occurring in like collaboration with lead, for example, and lead is something that is of concern for the crops and the concentrations we identified there. And like we can reduce the problem of pollution by increasing soil organic matter, while for sure there is also a natural phenomenon of some soil pollution based on this more geogenic source of these heavy metals that are occurring there. So in general, I'm not fully agree now with like the first rank and the like sixth rank, but like I think it's a matter of discussion, and there is not the like final solution of what is the most biggest challenge after mining and what is the least one. So as it's a combination of them. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions regarding this question?
If not, I have a final one for you. Exercise.
Yes, I think they don't have for now.
Okay, then let's move on.
Okay. Yes.
So what do you consider the biggest challenge to restore soil health?
Oh, difficult one.
So I think this is something very specific, maybe depending on where you are coming from. So if you consider, you can consider this post-mining lands, but like if you think about farming systems in your home country, like are the challenges more related to like access to different fertilizers, or like is it more some like barriers that you observe from the community, or some like policymaker decisions or laws, or what would you consider as the biggest challenge, or are there knowledge gaps? So there are so many different challenges we could observe when we talk about the restoration of soil health. So it can also be a financial problem. So where would you consider the biggest challenge, or even where would you consider knowledge gap to like close to make sure? And like if we think about the measures that can be conducted to restore soil health, is it simple to apply them? Or which kind of knowledge do we need in terms of, if we think about machinery, for example, do we have access to the machinery, how to use it? Or technologies for waste upcycling, for example, because if we think about the shortages of natural resources or peak phosphorus, for example, it's more to consider also that not all the resources are there forever. So the recycling of materials is also something that is very important. Yeah, I really like also that soil health cannot be fully regenerated. If we think about these mining activities, like we have a natural source, and if it's really severely degraded, it's a natural resource that cannot like restored in a way that it was before. So we should think about what we do as a human and our activities, what consequences it has on the long run. Even if there is some chances and little improvements possible, we cannot fully restore what was there without this big damage that humans and did to our environment. So do you think that also like communities should engage more together and find solutions? Because I really like the activities from the Austrian farmers that they connected, because often there is also barriers between different stakeholders, so that maybe researchers and farmers do not find the same language, but like if a farmer has some experience made on their fields to share, like what was working well, but where he or she failed a lot with. So to learn from the mistakes others make or from the successes that you do not need to repeat what others do, even considering that everyone has to farm their land under their pedoclimatic conditions. And I also like the change in land use. If we consider to feed like our globe, and there is also this big debate of nature restoration. It's more about conservation of what is still there. If we think about that, we cannot regenerate what is already lost. Yeah, it's really thinking about the conservation of like natural areas. And like with land use change, we often use a lot of soil organic carbon. We use a lot of soil biodiversity. And with this debate, it's also about intensive production on the one hand side. But while with many of these regenerative practices, we have an extensification process. When we talk about organic farming, often the production function is lowered, but there should be a nice compromise, I would say, because like we were talking about all the different soil functions, but for sure there is not like this win-win-win situation where we can optimize all of these functions at the same point. Yeah, so we can eventually optimize some biodiversity function, but not at the same time optimize the production function. So we should keep in mind where would be a good compromise for our society. Any further questions, comments, feedback?
Feedback? Any feedback to the speakers, maybe? Please. Yes.
So I would like to ask the same question from you. What do you consider as the biggest challenge to restore soil health? Maybe top three.
I
The last
really
question,
like
maybe.
the one here. The soil health can't exactly be the same before pollution, but also like before severe degradation. I think it's really about conservation is something that is one of the top priorities, I would see.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Keiblinger. I'm afraid the time is ending soon.
Yeah. Yeah. So like these are the quiz questions that I have prepared. So in case there are any further questions to my side, I'm open for them. Otherwise, I'm happy to stop sharing my screen and that you can continue with the program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Keiblinger. Maybe big applause for Dr. Keiblinger. Thank you for you. Yes. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Keiblinger, for your time and then for the presentation. It was nice. I mean, listening to some of your projects, and then we can share the ideas and also discussions. And unfortunately, the time is up for now. Maybe if there are still some questions from the participants, we will collect them and then send it to you by email. Yes, I think that is the easier way, I think, for that. And then before we end the session, the organizer would like to give you a certification of appreciation. We are showing you the certificate. Can you see? Not that one. Yes, thank you so much for your time again, Dr. Keiblinger. And then I would like to say thank you on behalf of the organizer too. And because the time is up, I would like to say goodbye maybe to you, Dr. Keiblinger. See
Goodbye.
you on
Many
another
thanks.
occasion and have a good day. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye bye.
I'm passing the mic back to the MC. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Katharina Keiblinger from the University of Natural Resources and Life Science, Vienna, BOKU, for such delightful information and material in this session. And also, we would like to say thank you to Ahdiar Fikri Mauna, PhD, as a moderator that had led this discussion in this session. Okay, can you give more again applause for our moderator and speaker? Okay, so after this, there will be certificate appreciation will be given to our moderator, Ahdiar Fikri Maulana PhD, by Imam Bagus as a committee of this summer course program. Okay, so before we move to the next session, we will have another coffee break for 30 minutes for the on-site participant. You may go to the 105 room, and for the online participant, you might have a short break. But please stay in the Zoom in the meeting room. Thank you. Oh, also, please fill the attendance form by it's not open yet? Okay, so please come back to this room at uh, 3:15 p.m. Thank you. Oh iya belum.
Udah? Tadi malam mau Ủa, Run. Salah.